You ever hear a sentence so unexpected? It splits your life in two? That's what happened to him. A man with blood on his hands, a past he thought was buried, and a phone call that would change everything. Sir, you were named as the father. 7 words. 1 hospital. And suddenly nothing made sense anymore. Not the silence after the divorce. Not the nightmares he kept having. Not the way she vanished like smoke without a goodbye. He'd spent 13 months convincing himself it was over. That she left because she couldn't love a man like him. And maybe she couldn't. But now there was a child. A sick child. And no one else to save him. Not even her. Because she was gone again. And this time she didn't leave a note. Only a name. And for a man who built his world on power, control, and fear, this wasn't just shocking. It was terrifying. Because deep down he knew this wasn't just about a baby. Someone wanted him vulnerable. Someone was using blood as leverage. And someone was about to pay for it. But first, he had to face what he never thought he'd have to. Fatherhood. Let me take you back to where it all began. Hi, my amazing friends and family. Welcome back to another story for today. If you are ready to enjoy this heartwarming story, smash the subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. I love seeing all your names and places. Also, don't forget to check out more of our interesting videos on the channel. And guess what? Tomorrow, I have got an even more exciting story to share with you that I know you'll love. Now, back to the story. The hallway smelled like bleach and quiet panic. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, too bright, too cold. Nurses moved quickly, speaking in clipped voices, their sneakers squeaking on polished floors. And in the middle of it all stood Dante Vassallo. Black suit, white shirt, unbuttoned just enough to show the gold chain against his chest, and the tattoo curling up his hand like smoke. His phone was still in his grip. He hadn't moved since the call. His eyes, sharp and unblinking, were fixed on the ICU doors. Behind them, a baby fought to breathe, a baby with his blood type, and a mother no one could find. Behind him, 2 men in suits stood still as shadows. His guards, his hounds. But Dante looked lost, like someone had carved a hole through the center of him. A nurse stepped forward carefully, voice low, like she was speaking to a wolf. We ran the tests. The baby, he's yours. He blinked once, slowly, then whispered, "Where's Elena?" The nurse hesitated, and that hesitation told him everything. She was gone, and someone somewhere knew exactly what they were doing. The hallway was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that screams something is terribly wrong. Dante Vassallo stood completely still, his black leather shoes planted on the polished white floor. Lights above flickered softly. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and sadness. His phone was still in his hand. The screen had gone dark. His fingers hadn't moved in minutes. The words from the nurse kept echoing in his head like gunshots. "Sir, you were named as the father." He didn't blink, didn't breathe. For once, his world, the empire he had built from blood and fear, felt like it was made of glass. And someone had just cracked it from the inside. Behind him, his 2 guards stood by the sliding glass doors, tense and silent. They weren't trained to handle moments like this. No one was. "Would you like to see the baby, Mr. Vassallo?" The nurse asked again, carefully. Dante looked at her with eyes that had seen too much. Eyes that usually froze men where they stood. But now those same eyes looked almost lost. He nodded once, wordless, mechanical. "Follow me." She turned and walked ahead, her shoes tapping gently across the floor. He followed slowly, like his soul hadn't caught up with his body. The room was filled with soft beeping. It smelled sterile, But underneath that, something faint, like baby powder and fear. Rows of incubators lined the room, each holding tiny, fragile lives. But the nurse led Dante to the far end, to the one nearest the window, to the one they said was his. She stepped aside. He stepped forward. And then, the world broke in half. Inside the glass box was a baby, so small he looked unreal. His chest rose and fell like a whisper. Tiny arms, a little nose, a soft mess of dark hair. Tubes ran across his cheeks and under his arms. Monitors blinked quietly beside him. Dante didn't move. He just stared. Something inside him shifted, like stone cracking, like something ancient being torn open. He had seen men die, had killed without blinking, had buried brothers, lovers, enemies. But this silent, helpless thing in front of him, he wasn't ready for this. The nurse whispered, "He's 7 months old. He came in with a high fever, infection, breathing problems. We needed to do a blood transfusion." She paused. "That's how we found out. The rare blood type, AB negative, matches yours exactly." Dante's voice came out rough, like gravel. "What's his name?" The nurse looked down at the clipboard. "Adrian Russo." That name. Her name. Elena. His jaw tightened. The silence turned cold. He looked at the baby again. Adrian. His son. His blood. And just like that, the monster who ruled New York's underworld felt completely powerless. "How long has he been here?" Dante asked low. The nurse glanced at the chart. 3 days. "Where's the mother?" The nurse hesitated. Dante's voice dropped lower, deadlier. "Where is she?" "She left," the nurse said. "She was here, stayed by his side for the first 2 nights. But 2 nights ago, she disappeared." "What do you mean disappeared?" he snapped, finally turning his full gaze on her. The nurse swallowed. Her hands shook a little. "She said she was stepping out to get some air. But she never came back." Dante's jaw clenched so hard it clicked. "Did anyone follow her? Security? Cameras?" The nurse nodded nervously. "Security has footage. But we're just medical staff, sir. We didn't know who she was. Or who he was. Now they did. Now everyone did." Dante turned away from the incubator and walked to the window. Rain tapped against the glass. The city outside looked like a different world. He remembered her. 13 months ago. The day she walked out of their home. No, their war zone. "You're married to the violence," she had whispered, standing at the doorway with her suitcase. "I'm just collateral damage." He hadn't chased her. Not because he didn't love her, but because love had never won in his world. Fear won. Loyalty won. Bullets won. He thought letting her go was protecting her. But now a baby was lying in a glass box, struggling to breathe, and the woman he once loved was missing. Maybe gone forever. His hand clenched into a fist. He'd find her. If anyone had taken her, there would be hell. If she'd run, there would still be hell. Dante walked out of the NICU and into the hallway. The nurse followed behind him, saying nothing. He pushed the elevator button. One of his guards stepped forward. "Boss, what do you want us to do?" Dante's voice was low, controlled, but every word burned. "Find the footage. Pull every second from the last 72 hours. "Yes, sir." The elevator dinged. He stepped inside. Alone. As the doors closed, he looked at his own reflection in the mirrored walls. For a second, he didn't recognize the man looking back. He didn't see the king of the underworld. He saw a man with blood on his hands, and a baby in a hospital bed with his last name. He saw a man who might have just lost the only person who ever loved him without fear. The night outside was soaked, Rain poured like it had something to hide. Dante drove alone. The city lights smeared across the windshield. Each drop on the glass was like another thought he couldn't shake. Was the baby really his? Was Elena alive? Why didn't she tell him? Why did she keep this a secret? He turned sharply at an intersection, tires screeching against the wet road. In his chest, something pounded harder than the engine. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was something heavier. It was guilt. And for a man like Dante Vassallo, guilt was more dangerous than any rival. Dante arrived at his building. The elevator rose to the 58th floor. His private penthouse. Security systems. Bulletproof windows. Luxury carved in concrete and steel. The doors opened, but the place felt empty. Not silent. Not quiet. Empty. He walked past his art, his imported furniture, the view of the skyline. None of it meant anything right now. He poured himself a drink but didn't sip it. He just stared out at the city. In the reflection of the glass, he saw himself. But something was different. He wasn't alone in the world anymore. There was a child now. A boy. And he was Dante's. His phone buzzed. A message. Security has the footage. You'll want to see this. Below it, a blurry still image. A woman in a hoodie, dark hair, holding a hospital ID, walking out the emergency doors. 2 men behind her. No ambulance. No goodbye. Just gone. Dante stared at the photo. His throat tightened. Elena! Wherever she was, whatever she was doing, it wasn't safe. And now he had a reason to burn the city down if he had to find her, to get his son back, and to understand what the hell had really happened 13 months ago. It started with a photo. One blurry image. Her. Elena. Dark hair. Oversized hoodie. Hospital ID swinging from her neck like a warning sign. She wasn't running in the picture. She wasn't being dragged either. She was walking. But the 2 men behind her? They weren't doctors. They weren't family. They looked like shadows dressed in skin. One of them had something in his hand. The frame was too pixelated to see what. But Dante knew trouble when he saw it. He had lived inside it for years. And this was it. He stared at the screen for too long. The room around him didn't exist. The city lights outside the window blurred into streaks. The silence in the penthouse wrapped around him like chains. His thumb hovered above the image. He zoomed in again. Her eyes were down. Her body looked heavy, like she was dragging 100 secrets behind her. She had walked away from their child. From his child. And yet, something about her walk didn't scream mother abandoning her baby. It whispered something else. Something worse. Something colder. Fear. He sent the photo to his tech team. I want footage. All of it. From every angle. Start at 2 a.m. Don't miss a second. 15 minutes later, they sent the video. He watched it in full silence. At exactly 2:13 a.m., Elena exited the maternity ward. Alone. She looked back once. That was all. Then 2 men appeared. Dark clothes. Gloves. One of them said something. She flinched. The next moment they flanked her. 1 on each side. Like guards. Or hunters. She didn't fight. She didn't run. She walked with them into the night like it was her only way out. The screen went black after that. Dante sat there. Chest tight. Jaw locked. That wasn't the woman he remembered. That wasn't the Elena who used to stand nose to nose with him and call him a coward when he reached for his gun instead of his heart. That wasn't the woman who once slammed a wine glass against the wall because he came home soaked in blood and didn't flinch. That woman didn't disappear. She detonated. So why now? Why leave the child? Why vanish like smoke? 13 months since she walked out of their life. 13 months of silence. 13 months since her voice last curled through his mind like smoke and made him feel things he had buried under concrete. "You'll never be free, Dante," she had said. "Not even from yourself." He remembered that night too well. She had shown up wearing black, like she was mourning something only she could see. They signed the papers at a long marble table. Neither of them sat down. Neither looked at the other. No lawyers. No shouting. Just silence. He had wanted to speak, to say something, but his throat was dry. His pride was louder than his heart. She placed the pen down like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Then she looked at him, not with hate, not even anger, just with that hollow kind of sadness that stays long after the tears are gone. "I loved you," she said, "but I cannot survive you." Then she walked out, and just like that, the strongest woman he ever knew became a ghost in his world. He didn't chase her, because chasing her meant choosing her. And he had never known how to choose love over power. Now he was staring at the cost. A child in the ICU, a mother missing in the night, and a heart that felt like it had been hollowed out with a knife. He picked up his phone. "Get my car," he said. "Now." 15 minutes later, the black SUV tore down the Brooklyn Bridge, slicing through the night like a bullet. Dante sat in the back, his elbows on his knees, head low. "She wouldn't have left him unless she had to," he said. His driver glanced in the rearview mirror. "You think she was taken?" "I think she made a deal," Dante muttered. "The kind that tastes like poison and feels like mercy." He stared out the window. Raindrops streaked the glass like falling stars. By the time they reached the hospital again, the sun was bleeding through the clouds. He walked straight past the front desk. Nurses parted like the sea. No one questioned him now. He stopped at the NICU window. There he was, Adrian, sleeping, breathing, living, so small, so still, so impossibly strong. Dante placed his hand flat on the glass. No guards, no guns, just him and the truth he could no longer run from. "If you're mine," he whispered, "I'll find her." Behind him, footsteps. Slow, careful. It was Matteo, his consigliere, the only man who had stood beside him longer than his own shadow. Matteo didn't speak right away, just held out a file. Thick, heavy, freshly printed. "We traced one of the men in the footage," Matteo said. Dante turned, eyes dark. "And?" Matteo's jaw tightened. "He's Santoro." The name dropped like a bomb. The Santoro cartel. Old enemies. Cold blood. The kind of men who didn't start wars. They finished them. "They touched Elena?" Dante's voice was quiet now. Too quiet. "We think they were watching her for months," Matteo said. "Maybe waiting. Maybe listening." Dante looked back at the baby. "They know," he whispered. Matteo nodded. "They know you have a weakness now." Dante closed his eyes. For years he ruled with fear, with fire, with silence. But now he had something they could take. And he had someone to find before they did. He didn't speak again. He just turned and walked away. Each step was a promise. To the child. To Elena. To the ghosts he had let grow too loud. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet. This was about her. The woman who vanished. And the storm she left behind. He didn't sleep that night. Didn't blink. Didn't move. The city kept spinning outside his window. But inside that penthouse, time stood still. Dante Vassallo sat in a leather chair with his elbows on his knees and fire in his chest. The storm inside him was too loud for silence and too quiet for screaming. He was thinking, burning, waiting. At exactly 4:17 a.m., he got the call. "We got one," said his man on the line. "He's Santoro." Dante didn't ask which one. Didn't care. just said 2 words. Bring him. By 5 a.m., a black SUV pulled up into the underground garage. The man they dragged out of the back seat was coughing, bleeding, missing a shoe. His hands were zip-tied behind his back, face covered with a torn pillowcase. They threw him into the concrete room below Dante's penthouse. No cameras, no sound, just cold walls and colder eyes. Dante walked in slowly. His footsteps echoed like thunder. He didn't shout, didn't raise a hand. He just stood there watching. The Santoro soldier looked up, eyes swollen, lips split. You know who I am? Dante asked. The man nodded. Once. Then you know what happens next. The man coughed blood. I didn't touch her. I swear. Dante's jaw tightened. I didn't ask that, he said. Silence. Then, softly, Dante asked, why was Elena Russo seen with your people? The man hesitated. Big mistake. Dante moved fast. Too fast. Grabbed the man by the throat and slammed him against the wall. Concrete cracked. Why? He hissed. The man choked, then gasped. She came to us. Everything in Dante froze. What did you say? She came to us. Said she needed protection. That she had something to offer. Dante stepped back like he had just been slapped. She offered something, the man said, panting. But I don't know what. Only that she begged for a deal. Said she couldn't run anymore. Dante stared at him like he was seeing something that didn't fit. Elena. Begging. Elena. Going to them. It didn't make sense. She hated the world he built. Hated the blood. The guns. The silence. But she would rather go to the Santoros than come back to him? That hurt more than a bullet ever could. Dante stepped out of the room and slammed the door behind him. He didn't speak for hours. His thoughts were knives. He couldn't sit still. Couldn't focus. So he went to the only place he still felt anything. Back to the hospital. Back to Adrian. The baby was still in the NICU, wrapped in wires, fighting a quiet war no one could see. Dante stood behind the glass like a ghost, hands in his pockets, eyes locked on the boy. He didn't move when the doctor walked up beside him. Mr. Vassallo? The doctor asked. Dante nodded. I'm Dr. Ramos. I've been overseeing the infant's care. Dante didn't look at him, just whispered, Is he going to make it? The doctor took a deep breath. He's stable, but still fragile. Born premature. 7 months. Small lungs. Weak immunity. Dante finally looked at him. And we almost lost him during the fever, Ramos said. We needed a transfusion. Fast. His blood type is AB negative. Extremely rare. That's when we ran a match across the system. Dante felt his stomach twist. Dr. Ramos continued, Yours was the only match in our emergency donor database. We didn't have time to wait. Dante didn't speak. I thought you should know, the doctor added. He wouldn't have made it without that blood. For a long moment, neither man said a word. Then Dante turned. I want to donate. Directly. Dr. Ramos blinked. You sure? Dante nodded once. Minutes later, he sat in a cold room with a needle in his arm and a plastic bag filling slowly with dark red. He didn't flinch, didn't twitch, just stared straight ahead as his blood drained into the bag. A nurse tried to make small talk. Dante ignored her. In his mind, there was only one thought. She went to the cartel instead of me. That choice haunted him. It didn't add up. Elena wasn't weak. She didn't beg. She didn't fold. So why would she go to the one group she knew he hated more than the devil? He had built an empire from nothing. She knew that. She had access to every dollar, every name, every escape route. So why not run? Why go to them? Why vanish right after giving birth? He closed his eyes. Something wasn't right. He could feel it in his bones. When the nurse finished, he stood up without a word and left the hospital. Rain started again. Soft, cold, relentless. Back in his car, he stared out the window. The streetlights flickered like they were nervous. A baby, a betrayal, and a woman who disappeared like smoke. He opened his phone and called Matteo. "Bring me everything you have on Elena. All of it." "Already on the way to you," Matteo replied. 10 minutes later, Matteo walked into the penthouse holding a thick folder. He placed it on the table. Didn't speak. Dante opened it. The first page stopped his heart. Elena Russo, informant. His hand clenched the edge of the file. He flipped to the next page. Dates, meetings, recorded calls. None of it made sense. His name wasn't listed, but associates were. Routes, schedules, codes. She had been talking to the FBI. Behind his back. His own wife. The room felt like it was tilting. He kept flipping, then stopped. One file was redacted, top to bottom, but one word slipped through the black bars. Son. That's when the world cracked again. He wasn't just a father by blood. He was part of a storm that had been moving for months. A storm she had tried to hold back, or maybe guide. But now it was here, and no one was safe. The folder sat on the table like a bomb waiting to go off. Dante didn't move, didn't blink. The words on the page kept screaming at him, even though the room was dead silent. Informant. Elena Russo. His hand hovered above the file, but he didn't touch it again. He just stared, like the paper might burst into flames if he blinked. Matteo stood in the corner of the room, watching his boss carefully, as if one wrong breath might trigger something deadly. Dante finally spoke, voice low and cold. "How long?" Matteo hesitated. "We think the Bureau approached her around 15 months ago, right after she left." Dante turned his head slowly, his eyes like a knife pressed against Matteo's neck. "She left me," he whispered. "Then went straight to the feds?" Matteo didn't answer. He couldn't. Dante walked to the window. The city lights below sparkled like shattered glass. His reflection stared back at him, tired, hollow, and burning. He remembered her voice, soft but shaking. The last night they shared a room. She had stood barefoot on the marble floor, wearing his shirt, eyes filled with something too heavy to name. "One day," she said, "they'll come for you, and I'll have to choose a side." He had laughed then, shrugged it off, told her no one touches him, no one gets close enough. But she hadn't smiled back. She had just looked at him, like she already knew what choice she'd have to make. And now here it was on black and white paper, proof that she had picked a side. And it wasn't his. But something wasn't right. If she betrayed him, why use his real name at the hospital? Why vanish after delivering a baby she protected all this time? Why not let the feds take him down if that's what she wanted? No, it didn't add up. This wasn't betrayal. It smelled like fear. And fear didn't come from Dante. Came from something bigger, something darker. He turned back to Matteo. "Get me Collins." Matteo frowned. "The FBI?" Dante nodded. "I want the truth, not the paperwork." 2 hours later, he was sitting in the back booth of a closed Italian restaurant. The lights were dim. The place smelled like old wine and older secrets. Agent Collins walked in through the side door. No badge, no gun, just tired eyes and a stiff black coat. He slid into the booth across from Dante. They stared at each other for a long time. Then Dante said, "You had her." Collins nodded. "We did." "Why?" "She knew things," Collins replied. "Flight logs, offshore accounts, shipments, names." Dante clenched his jaw. I never let her near that side of me. Collins gave him a tired look. Doesn't matter. She listened. She learned. She remembered. Dante's hands curled into fists. You used her. Collins didn't flinch. We offered her protection. In exchange for information. She agreed. At first. At first. Collins leaned forward. She changed her mind. Dante froze. She said she couldn't do it. Said if she gave you up, she'd never forgive herself. Dante's heart thudded once, loud and hard. She disappeared 2 days after that conversation, Collins added. We lost all contact. We assumed she ran. Maybe got scared. Or maybe someone else found her first. Dante's eyes darkened. You think she's dead? Collins shook his head. I think she's smarter than all of us. And more scared than you'll ever understand. Dante sat back, the weight of those words crawling up his spine like ice. He remembered the night she left. She had said nothing, just kissed him once, on the cheek, then walked away. He thought she was weak, but maybe she was strong in ways he never understood. Maybe she wasn't running from him. Maybe she was running for him, for their child, for the only piece of him worth saving. Rage and guilt wrestled in his chest like wild dogs. He had loved her, in his own way, but he never listened, never asked what she needed. He just gave her silence, power, distance, and now it might have cost him everything. Collins stood up to leave. I can't protect you, Vassallo, and I won't lie for you. Dante didn't move. I don't want protection, he said. I want the truth. Collins paused, then looked at him. Then find her, before someone else does. He left without another word. Dante stayed there, breathing slowly, fists pressed into the table. His head hurt, his chest ached, but his mind was clear. She didn't betray him. She tried to protect him, and the world punished her for it. He stepped outside into the freezing air. Rain was falling again. The sky was gray, heavy, angry. His phone buzzed in his coat pocket. Unknown number. He answered. All he heard was breathing. Then a voice. Shaky. Afraid. Sir, the baby. He's gone. His stomach dropped. What? Someone broke in. Took him. Dante couldn't breathe. Who? We don't know. No cameras. No witnesses. Just gone. The line went dead. And for the first time in his life, Dante Vassallo felt true panic. Not for his empire. Not for his name. But for the one thing he didn't know how to protect. His son. Rain poured like it had a purpose. Like the sky knew something was wrong. Dante's car tore through the streets like a bullet chasing its target. Horns blared, tires screeched, and streetlights blinked past in flashes. But his mind was darker than the storm, colder than the wind. The baby was gone. Gone. They didn't just take a child. They took his son. The only piece of Elena he had left. The only piece of himself he still believed in. By the time he reached the hospital, his guards had already sealed the entrance. Security was scrambling. The press hadn't arrived yet, but it was only a matter of time. The air was thick with fear. Dante stepped out of the SUV, black coat flaring behind him like smoke, eyes locked on the glass doors. No one tried to stop him. Not tonight. Inside, alarms still rang. Nurses were crying. A doctor tried to speak to him, but he brushed past like a shadow. Straight to the NICU. Empty. The incubator sat alone. Tubes still dangling. Monitor lights blinking with nothing left to read. A ghost of a child remained. Dante stood there, silent, hands clenched into fists. Behind him, a nurse whispered something to a security guard. Surveillance footage. They had it. Dante followed the guard through a back hallway, down to a locked room. The air buzzed with electricity and tension. A screen flickered to life. At exactly 3:12 a.m., a masked team slipped through the back exit of the hospital. 2 men, 1 woman. Precise, silent, professional. They moved through the halls like they had practiced it 100 times. One carried the baby. The others cleared the path. In less than 2 minutes, they were gone. Not a trace left behind. Except one thing. The last frame of the footage caught something scribbled on the nursery door in red. It wasn't paint. It was blood. Dante's jaw tightened as the camera zoomed in. You want him back? Bring her. The room fell dead quiet. Dante didn't blink. Didn't breathe. The silence inside him broke like glass. This wasn't about power anymore. This was personal. So personal it made his skin burn. He turned to his men. Find the vehicle. Within 30 minutes, they had it. A gray van. Plates fake. Engine stolen. Abandoned near the edge of the docks. By the time they reached the location, the air was soaked with salt and gasoline. The warehouse stood like a beast from a nightmare. Rusted metal. Broken glass. Silence louder than screams. Dante didn't wait. He led the charge himself. The doors burst open. Guns raised. Shadows leapt across the walls. But there was no baby. No crib. No sound of crying. Just cold. And something worse. On the far wall, burned into the metal with fire, was the Santoro insignia. A serpent strangling a rose. And below it, smeared in fresh blood. You want him back? Bring her. No signature. No demands. Just a threat. A trap. And a promise. Dante stared at it, jaw locked so tight he tasted blood. He had been in this life for years. Had fought wars. Buried friends. Survived betrayal. But this was different. This was his son. A life too small to fight back. A target too innocent to deserve this. His men gathered behind him, tense, waiting for orders. One of them, older, with a scar down his cheek, stepped forward. If we go to war, he said quietly, you know what happens. Dante didn't turn around. They'll come for all of it, the man continued. Your allies, your fronts, the rest of your blood. Another man nodded. It won't just be the Santoros. The others will smell weakness. Dante stared at the message on the wall. The blood had started to drip. Then he whispered, let them come. The words tasted like fire. This wasn't business anymore. It was war. Not for money. Not for land. For blood. His blood. His son. And the woman he still couldn't stop loving. As they exited the warehouse, Matteo pulled Dante aside. He looked pale, tight-lipped. There was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Guilt, fear, truth. Dante didn't say a word, just stared at him. Matteo swallowed hard. I knew, he said softly. Dante's eyes narrowed. Knew what? I knew about Elena, the FBI, her contact. Time slowed. The night stopped breathing. Dante stepped forward. Closer. You knew she was being watched? Matteo nodded once. And you said nothing? I thought if she talked, we'd all go down. I thought she'd run. I didn't think she'd stay long enough to have the kid. Silence. Dead and dangerous. Dante's voice dropped to a whisper. She was pregnant. Matteo lowered his eyes. Dante stepped back. His heart was thundering now. Not from fear. From betrayal. From rage so deep it felt like drowning. He turned away. Didn't say a word. Didn't look back. Because the next move he made would change everything. The air inside the penthouse was thick. Heavy like smoke before the fire starts. Silent like the seconds before a gunshot. Dante stood at the center of his study, staring at Matteo, the man he had trusted for 15 years. His brother in blood, his shadow in every war. Now he stood in front of him like a stranger. Matteo didn't look away. Dante's voice was quiet, but sharp enough to cut glass. How long? Matteo's jaw clenched. His eyes were red. His hands trembled, just a little. 8 months, he said. It started 8 months ago. Dante didn't blink. What started? Matteo swallowed hard. The heat, the feds. They were closing in. We were losing ports, accounts, crews. Everything was slipping. I couldn't protect the business, not alone. So you ran to the Santoros? Dante asked, his voice still soft. But under it, the storm was coming. They offered support, Matteo said. Safe routes, quiet transfers. They promised they'd hold off the feds if we gave them a cut. A bigger one. Dante took a step closer. And the price? Matteo looked away. Dante's voice was ice now. What did you give them, Matteo? Matteo's voice cracked. I didn't know about the kid. Not at first. But Elena, she was the one piece they couldn't control. They wanted her. Silence. Loud enough to shatter the walls. You gave her to them, Dante said. Not a question. A death sentence. I thought they'd just scare her, Matteo pleaded. I thought they'd use her to keep you from going off the rails. But they lied. They always lie. Dante stared at him. Eyes dark. Face unreadable. You let them take her, he whispered. And now they have my son. Matteo took a step back. I tried to fix it. I did. That's why I didn't tell you. I thought I could undo it before it got this far. Dante reached behind him and closed the door. The sound echoed like thunder. He walked to the bar, poured 2 glasses of scotch, then slid one toward Matteo. The glass stopped just short of his hand. Matteo didn't touch it. You know what this is? Dante asked. Matteo looked down. A last drink. Dante shook his head slowly. A goodbye. The room cracked. Matteo lunged forward. Desperate. Broken. Dante, please. I didn't mean for this. I was trying to protect you. I was trying to protect us. Dante didn't speak. He pulled the gun from the back of his belt. Simple. Black. Cold. He raised it. Matteo's eyes widened, tears brimming. You're my brother. The shot echoed like lightning through bone. Matteo dropped. No scream, just silence. The glass tipped off the table and shattered on the floor. Dante stood over the body, breathing heavy, shoulders shaking. Blood pooled across the marble floor, creeping like a shadow. He stared at it. Then he fell to his knees. His hand still held the gun, but his face cracked. A sound left his throat. Not a cry, not a growl. Something worse. Regret. He looked up at the shelves. The books. The trophies. The power. And it all felt fake. All of it. He crawled to the side table, opened the drawer, and pulled out the one thing that still felt real. A photo. Elena. Smiling. Wind in her hair. Back when the world was still light. He held it like it could forgive him. You tried to warn me, he whispered. I didn't listen. His voice broke. I thought I was saving you by letting you go, but I was saving myself. Like a coward. The lights outside flickered. Somewhere in the city, sirens screamed. Dante stood slowly, face wet, but eyes burning again. No more waiting. No more fear. No more silence. He picked up his phone. Dialed a number only one man could answer. Talk, he said. The voice on the other end replied instantly. We have a signal. Dante didn't breathe. Elena! Alive! The voice said. Red Hook. Brooklyn. Near the old rail yard. Her burner phone just pinged for the first time in days. Dante closed his eyes. Everything in him pulsed once. He hung up without another word. Walked to the mirror. Loaded the gun. Checked the clip. tightened the chain around his neck. Then he looked at himself one last time. The man staring back wasn't a king, wasn't a monster. He was something new, something dangerous, a father. And no one, not the cartel, not the feds, not the ghosts in his own walls, was going to stop him now. Midnight. Red Hook was dead quiet, but something in the shadows was breathing, watching, waiting. Dante's black SUV rolled through the docks like a ghost on wheels. No headlights, no sound but the slow grind of tires on wet gravel. He sat in the passenger seat, dressed in black, eyes locked ahead. His fingers tapped slowly against the grip of his gun. His face didn't move, but his heart was louder than the silence. Beside him sat Leo, his last surviving soldier from the old wars. In the back were two others, one sniper, one driver. No more, no less. That was all he needed tonight. They didn't come for business. They came for blood. The warehouse loomed ahead, huge and broken, like a giant left to rot. Rust covered the walls. Smoke leaked from the cracks. A spotlight circled lazily overhead, sweeping the yard like a blind eye trying to see. Dante didn't wait for it to blink. He stepped out of the SUV, crouched low, and signaled the others. "Move," he whispered. They split off like shadows. Fast, silent. He took the side. Always did. A narrow alley wrapped around the building like a throat. The metal siding was peeling. A pipe hung low from the roof. He grabbed it, climbed, swung onto a ledge, and slipped through a broken window. The second he landed, he knew where he was. The air told him. Gunpowder, smoke, blood, and something worse. Rot. He moved slow like death wearing shoes. Every creak, every breath felt like a scream waiting to happen. Voices echoed in the distance. He followed them, down a corridor of shattered glass, past walls stained with old messages in old blood. Then he saw her, Elena, tied to a metal chair. Her face was bruised, her lips split, one eye swollen shut, but her head lifted the second she felt him near. Her voice was barely a whisper. "They have him, Dante." She was shaking. "They have our son." Dante's throat clenched, but he didn't speak. He moved to her fast, ripped the tape from her wrists, caught her before she fell. Then, behind them, a slow clap echoed through the room. "Well, well, well." Carlo Santoro, tall, pale, grinning like a devil in a suit. "You really came alone," he laughed. "For a woman who ruined you. For a child you never even knew." Dante stood slowly, pulling Elena behind him. Carlo kept smiling. "You're predictable, Vassallo. That's why we'll always win." Dante raised his gun. "I'm not here for games." Carlo shrugged. "Too bad." Then all hell broke loose. Gunshots exploded from both sides of the warehouse. Walls cracked. Bullets screamed. Dante ducked, dragged Elena behind a crate, fired 2 rounds, hit one guard clean in the chest. Another dropped from the catwalk, spraying bullets. Leo caught him mid-air. Then a grenade hit the far corner. Flames burst. Screams followed. Dante's team was falling fast. One by one. Smoke swallowed the room. Carlo was gone. But his voice was everywhere. "This is what love does, Dante," he called out. "It kills you slow." Dante reloaded, face soaked in sweat and blood. He moved through the fire like it belonged to him. In the center of the warehouse, he found Carlo again. They collided like gods in a storm. No guns, just fists. Bone cracked, blood sprayed. They slammed into walls, rolled over glass, kicked, punched, roared. Then Dante grabbed a rusted pipe from the ground and drove it through Carlo's stomach. The man gasped, eyes wide, mouth open like he wanted to curse but couldn't remember the words. Dante leaned close. You touched my family. Carlo didn't answer. He just bled. And then he fell. Dante turned. The flames were rising fast. He ran back, scooped Elena into his arms. She was barely awake, whispering his name. He held her tighter. Close your eyes. She did. He ran through the fire, boots slamming against hot concrete, smoke clawing at his throat. Behind them, the warehouse began to crack. Explosions rippled through the roof. Metal screamed. They didn't look back. Outside, the van was still running. Leo was gone. Shot. Dead. But the keys were still in the ignition. Dante slid into the seat, Elena in his lap. The van sped off. Neither of them spoke for a long time. The city passed in silence. Her head rested on his shoulder, bleeding, broken, breathing. Then she whispered something that stopped his heart cold. The FBI didn't make me inform on you. He looked down at her. She met his eyes, pain flickering like lightning in a storm. I made them. The words hit like a bullet between the ribs. And suddenly, nothing was simple anymore. The van moved like a whisper through sleeping streets. Rain slid down the windows, blurring traffic lights into smears of red and gold. Buildings stood tall and silent, watching as they passed. No one spoke. Just the sound of wet tires and the faint hum of an engine pulling two broken people through a broken night. Elena lay in the back seat, her head against Dante's lap, her eyes half open, her skin pale as moonlight. Her breath came in shallow waves. Her fingers curled weakly around his hand. Dante stared down at her. Her words still echoed in his chest. I made them. He wanted to ask why, to scream, to rage, but all he could do was hold her. She blinked up at him, and her voice came soft, like glass under pressure. I knew they were coming for you, Dante. Not just the feds, the international unit, the ones who don't knock, the ones who don't leave trails. His brows drew tight, but he didn't speak. She went on. I knew they'd take everything, freeze the accounts, shred the files, kill anyone who got in the way, including you. Tears welled at the corners of her swollen eyes, but she didn't let them fall. So I cut a deal. Quiet. Buried. I gave them names, just not yours. I offered intel on the bigger players, offshore groups, Eastern syndicates, things you told me without even knowing. She paused, chest rising and falling like it hurt just to breathe. But then, I found out I was pregnant. Dante's hand tightened around hers. They found out too, she whispered. The cartel. I never told them. Never showed. But someone did. Someone always does. She looked away. They took me before I could run. Said they wanted leverage. Said if I didn't cooperate, they'd use the baby to ruin you. So I kept quiet. Lied. Did whatever it took to keep him safe. Dante's voice cracked like ice under fire. And the hospital? I waited too long, she said, her lips trembling. He came early, weak, barely breathing. I thought if I used your name, maybe someone would notice. Maybe you'd come before they found me again. He stared at her. So many pieces suddenly made sense. The blood, the silence, the betrayal that wasn't betrayal at all. It was love, twisted, buried, wild, but love. The van finally pulled into a safe house on the edge of Manhattan. One of Dante's last clean spots. A place even the ghosts had forgotten. He carried Elena inside himself. Laid her gently on the old leather couch. She didn't protest. Didn't flinch. She was too tired to pretend anymore. In the other room, the baby's cry broke the silence. A small, high-pitched sound. Faint but alive. One of Dante's men stepped out holding a bundle wrapped in a white blanket. The child's safe, he said. Doctor checked him. No injuries. Just hungry. The man hesitated. Would you like to? He didn't finish. Dante just nodded, took the bundle into his arms like it was made of fire and breath and everything he thought he'd never have. Adrian, his son. The baby's face was tiny and soft, eyes barely open, mouth searching for warmth. Dante stood frozen, like time had cracked open and offered him a second chance. He held the boy tighter, not like a criminal, not like a boss, but like a father. No blood on his hands, no gun at his side, just skin to skin, heartbeat to heartbeat. Elena watched from the couch, her eyes filled with tears now. Not fear, not pain, but release. She smiled weakly. You can't fix this with violence, she said, her voice barely more than air. Dante looked up at her, his heart full and crushed at the same time. Then I'll learn another way. The baby stirred in his arms. A small hand reached out, clumsy and soft, brushing against Dante's chain, and something inside him melted, right there in that quiet room, surrounded by broken walls and burned pasts. He breathed, really breathed, for the first time in years. But the moment didn't last. A knock came at the door, sharp, measured, not loud, but final. Dante handed Adrian to the doctor, opened the door slowly, and there he stood, Agent Collins, rain on his coat, shadow on his face. His eyes didn't flinch. We know everything, he said. His voice was low. About the warehouse, the bodies, the fire, the blood. Dante didn't blink, didn't speak. He just stared back, because he knew what was coming next, and he was ready for it. The rain had stopped, but the world still smelled like smoke and endings. Dante stood in the doorway, staring into Agent Collins' eyes. The air between them was thick, heavy with truth. Behind him, Elena lay weak but alive. The baby was asleep in the next room. Safe, for now. Collins didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. We have you for arson, illegal weapons, multiple bodies in a warehouse fire, and cartel affiliation. Dante didn't flinch. And yet, Collins added softer now, I didn't come here to arrest you. Dante's brows pulled slightly. Not confusion, curiosity. Collins stepped inside, closing the door behind him. There's a deal on the table, he said. Federal immunity, but it comes with a price. Dante didn't speak. He just waited. You help us dismantle the Centauro cartel remnants. You hand over every ledger, every route, every offshore account. And most important, you shut it all down. Dante's jaw tightened. Everything? He asked. Everything, Collins said. Dante looked toward the room where Elena rested, then toward the door where his son slept. He saw the blood on his hands, but he also saw the tiny fingers that had curled around his chain. No more blood, he whispered. No more ghosts. Collins nodded. Then we have a deal. The news spread fast inside his circle. Shock, confusion. Some called it betrayal. Others called it suicide. But Dante didn't flinch. He moved through it like stone. Quiet, unshakable. He walked into every room he once ruled like a king and stripped it bare. He handed over ledgers filled with secrets. Bank keys that had never been spoken aloud. Names no one dared write down. He burned nothing, hid nothing. He gave it all. And with every signature, every locked vault, every account frozen by the feds, he cut a piece of his empire out by hand. The underworld trembled, but no one came for him, because the myth of Dante Vassallo was too heavy to challenge. Even broken, he cast a shadow too long to step over. By the time spring rolled in, the city barely whispered his name anymore. He had vanished, by choice, into the quiet, into the light, far from the city, nestled in the green arms of the countryside. A small stone house sat beside a silver lake. Trees rustled softly outside. Birds replaced the sound of sirens. And inside that house, life had begun again. Dante rose early now, not for war, but for bottles, blankets, baby laughter. Adrian was growing fast. Big brown eyes, a crooked smile, a face that looked more like Elena every day. Sometimes, Dante would just sit and watch him sleep, fingers twitching, little chest rising and falling like it carried the whole world. Elena moved gently now, slower but not broken. Her body healed, but the scars stayed. So did the strength. They built a garden together, cooked together, laughed in whispers. Some nights they lit no candles. They just sat in silence, listening to the wind. And in those moments nothing hurt. One afternoon, the sun poured through the windows like honey. Dante stood by the glass, holding Adrian in his arms. The boy giggled, grabbing his father's necklace, tugging it playfully. The gold chain glinted in the light, still warm against his skin, still heavy. But now it didn't feel like a weapon. Felt like a story, a reminder of everything lost and everything found. Elena walked up behind him. Her voice was soft. "Do you ever regret it?" Dante looked at her, then down at the child in his arms. He smiled, small, quiet, but real. "Every sin I committed," he said, "led me here, to him." The baby yawned. The world kept turning, and for once, it turned without blood on its hands. The past hadn't disappeared, but it had been tamed, buried in soil instead of ash. And in the stillness of that moment, something new took its place. Not fear, not power, just love. In the end, it wasn't the empire Dante Vassallo built that defined him. It was the heartbeat he couldn't control, the one that called him father.
Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end of this story. If you enjoyed this story, I promise you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more thrilling as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.